Hello, hello. Thank you for those of you who are joining. I'm just going to wait a little bit longer, then we will get started. If you're on, please like, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, leave any comments. Um, and yeah, we'll get started in just a bit. Also, you guys, if you like this channel and want to show support, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Charday. Cash App or Venmo, Shay Charday. I really appreciate those of you guys who have been supportive. And if you want to see more content like this, if you want to get the message out here, I am going to need your support. So again, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, or even PayPal, Shay Charday. So just to hop right into the subject, there is this almost obsession, if you will, or this constant theme of Dusties. I feel like I'm hearing about that all the time. Dusties, and usually, at least the conversation I've heard, usually when you hear the term Dusty, it's almost always associated with black men. I just don't, you know, I don't know how to get around it. At least from what I've seen, Dusties is almost equivalent to the Pookie and Ray Ray, which we know in many instances is almost exclusively connected to black men. Um, and so there's this whole idea, which I'm sure many of you guys know, where women, especially black women in general, we are pushed and promoted to leave the black community or to divest or to marry outside of the black community so that we can avoid dusty behavior, so that we can avoid all of these men, presumably all these black men who are just exhibiting dusty, ratchet, crazy hood, ghetto, whatever you call it, behavior. And so that's a pretty common talking point. You see it all the time, or at least I see it all the time. I don't know, again, if it's the algorithm just working because of different videos that I've seen in the past, but again, it is constant. It is constant. Now, the interesting thing is, my personal opinion is that dusty behavior, ratchet behavior, that can be found in all ethnicities, in all cultures, in all races, and even in genders. That's not specific to a particular gender. It's not specific to a particular race. You can find broken, crazy, dusty attitudes all throughout. And while it's not necessarily oftentimes portrayed like that, the proof is in the pudding. And what's interesting is there is this recent video that I ran across. It was a black woman, presumably a swirler or an ex-swirler, who basically was talking about how she married a white man, and every oftentimes, when a black woman marries a white man, the assumption is that, hey, she's marrying up in some capacity, or that she's going to be marrying a guy who is safer. I have heard this over and over and over again, in subtle ways or in non-subtle ways. But this idea of like, okay, hey, if you're a black woman who is marrying outside of the race for whatever reason, that's generally a safer choice, whether it's for emotional reasons, whether it's for societal reasons, whether it's for familiar reasons, whatever it may be. But there's this idea of like, okay, if you marry outside of the black community, you're going to escape a lot of this dusty drama. So that's a misconception. And so what's interesting is, here is a lady literally saying, hey, I dated out and I got the most pookiest, scrubbiest, like dusty out there, and he's white. And instead of me trying to talk to it or share her experience, I'm gonna share the video. So let me pull it up or play it. Here you go.
So abandoning your children's definitely not race or doesn't depend on your race. Well, fucked up that you think that just because a man's white he can't abandon his children. But okay, but yes, my ex is white. He was very, very abusive, and he abandoned me, this child,
Mm.
and the four others that we actually have together that I don't have in my custody because of being with him. So, yeah, yeah. White people or white men abandon their children too.
There we have it. Here is a swirler, or a woman who married interracially, who was saying, "Hey, this whole idea, this whole thought that if you marry out or if you marry white, you're not going to have to deal with any of this drama. You're not going to have to deal with any of this mess. This is a lie because I am living proof that although I married a white guy, I am still dealing with some Pookie and Ray Ray energy. She got 5 kids and the dude walked off and left her. And, you know, I wish her the best. This is certainly not a knock against her. I know she was, public about this, and so probably because she wanted to share her experience. And I, you know what, I appreciate her being honest. I appreciate her coming out and saying, "Look, don't fall into this illusion that just because you marry out means that you're just automatically going to escape all these issues." And this brings me to my bigger point. Just because you decide to marry or date out or date interracially does not mean that you are going to escape all issues. Because reality is, we generally attract who we are. So if you are a broken person, if you are a person that is attracted to drama, or you like to trauma bond, or you have low self-esteem, or you're used to being abused, whatever it may be, you can even go and leave the black community. You can leave whatever community you are, and go find a white version of what you attracted in the black community, or go find a lighter version of the drama that you attracted in the black community, because wherever you go, there you are. You know what I mean? And if you start to find that in all the different situations, all of the different, dating situations you've had, there's a consistent stream of drama. It's like at a certain point, you have to look at the mirror and say, who is the common denominator in this? Who is the common denominator? And why is it that I am continuing to attract drama, or why is it that I'm continuing to attract certain kinds of people? And so I think it's disingenuous. And I also think it is rather, there's no accountability. There's no accountability when you just go write up an entire group of people and say, hey, okay, black women are this, or black men are that, or white men are this, or this. Like, you completely write off an entire group of people because of your experience with them, versus looking in the mirror and saying, okay, I had these experiences with black men, or I had these experiences with black women, or I had these experiences with, with white men, whatever. But where was I in that process? Where was I in that interaction? Did I in any way contribute to that? And so I appreciate her. I appreciate her coming out and saying, hey, just because choose to be a swirler does not mean that you're going to escape all issues. Because again, if you are a broken person, if you have your own issues, if you have self-hatred, if you have trauma, if you have mental illness, whatever it may be, if you're a broken person, even if you decide to leave your community, your prospective community, and you date and marry out, you're going to attract who you are. And broken people generally attract broken people. And that has absolutely nothing to do with your ethnicity, with your race, or even your gender. So, the crazy thing about it, is, I can even think of my own circle of friends. And granted, this is anecdotal, but just to make a point, I have two friends that I can think of right now, both of who married white. One, she was a swirler. She married out, and it didn't end so well, and she's back and forth in court fighting with her white ex-husband, and he's doing all kinds of crazy things. Honestly, the kinds of things that black men are stereotyped for. Not wanting to take care of the kids, or death threats. There was lying and cheating involved. There was just all kinds of just mess involved. And of course, we oftentimes hear this kind of behavior almost exclusively associated with the black men. Oh, black men won't take care of their kids, or they will have affairs, or they will scam you, this kind of stuff. And here is this African American woman who very much dated and married a white guy, and he is displaying every last Pookie and Ray Ray attribute out there, and he's as white as they can be. And so, like I'm saying, we can't just think just because a person marries out or dates out that they're just going to escape the drama. And I have even another friend. She's a white woman married a white man. Same, not exact same scenario, but similar scenario. He's abusive. Not really good to the kids. They're in this horrible, heated court battle. I mean, it's just a mess. This is a white family. It's just a mess. And so, um, again, broken people broken people choose broken people. If you're an individual that has no understanding of who you are, you don't have a relationship with God, you don't have a good relationship with yourself, you hate yourself, there's trauma, whatever it may be, if you're broken, then you're going to go out and choose broken people. And if you as a person or as an individual, if you choose broken people, and then you have a bad or broken result, that's not the fault of the whole people group. That's not like if you're a black woman and you continue to choose Pookie and Ray Rays, you can't now go and say all black men are horrible. No, it's just the men that you chose. And I think that needs to be clear. I think that needs to be stated. So thank you for those of you who have just hopped on. Please get the likes up. Please, any comments, tag people on this who you may think may find this interesting. We are talking about the reality that just because somebody dates or chooses to, date or marry outside of their ethnicity or race does not mean that they are completely drama free, and does not mean that they are necessarily going to be escaping the Pookie and Ray Ray energy that is oftentimes associated with black men. And as this woman, I just played her video, she's living proof. She's a swirler who, and God bless her for coming out and being so honest, but she's a swirler who has 5 kids, and her white husband walked off and left her. And again, we oftentimes hear this abandonment associated with black men, but she literally says in the video, just because you're with a white guy doesn't mean he can't go off and leave you. And why is that important? It's important to know because broken people attract broken people, and you find brokenness in all communities, in every single last communities. I have friends in the white community, I have friends in the black community, Asian community, Latinx community. It's like all of it. And some of them are broken, some of them are healed. And it's like that has nothing to do with, their skin. It's like that has more to do with their internal well-being. And so I think the reason this is important is because there is a message out there that is specifically that's telling black women, and even some black men, it's saying, hey, all the men here are trash, or all the women here are trash. You're going to do better if you leave the community. And granted, I understand the ideology, but the problem with that argument is that it doesn't require any self accountability. And again, as I said before, if you are a woman and you have hybristophilia, right, or you are attracted to danger, like many women are, and that's the truth. There's many women, especially us women, and this goes across all races, but it's generally known, like women when they're young in their 20s, they like the sexy guy who's maybe a little bit dangerous, who's a little bit, because that's seen as masculine. So if you're a woman and you're attracted to danger or hybristophilia, then you can't be mad if you choose a dangerous guy, but then your life is put in danger. That has nothing to do with the men, all the men in that people group. That has a lot more to do with maybe where you were at or what you were attracted to. And I think oftentimes that is missed out of the conversation. What is often heard is that, like, oh, these kinds of men or these kinds of women are trash or horrible. Which, yeah, there are people out there who don't have good character. But what's not ever talked about is, okay, but why were you attracted to them? Why were you attracted to a Dusty? Why were you attracted to the thought? What does that show about what's going on with you? Or what does that show about what's going on with that individual that they would choose to date and marry, and in some cases even procreate with a person that they would now go turn around and consider dusty? What does that show about what's going on with you? So thank you for those of you who have just hopped on. If you like what you hear, please leave your comments. Also, please, you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sade. If you like this content, if you want to see more stuff like this, I will need your support. So you can find me on Cash App or Venmo, Shay Sade. You can also send in some super chats. I really appreciate all of you. But as I said before, If you can look at your track record, if you can look at your track record, and all you are seeing is basically whether it's dusty energy, pookie ray ray energy, thought energy, whatever. At a certain point, you got to look in the mirror and say, okay, I am the common denominator in this. So, again, what about me was attracted to that brokenness? And I think if we're going to have this conversation about, okay, dating out or dating up or hypergamy or swirl or divest, whatever it may be, there also needs to be a little bit of accountability. But what is not true is that just because you're going to date, you choose to marry out, you choose to date out. What is not true is that that automatically means that you're going to escape all problems, because there are plenty of situations out there to suggest otherwise. So here's actually another situation that just came out. Let's see if I can pull it up. It was let's see if there's an actual article on it. Let me see if this can be shared. Give me one moment. So it was a gentleman, a gentleman. You guys may or may not have heard. This is a white guy who knew that he had yeah. So this is a Central Florida man with HIV sentenced to 2 years for not telling sexual partners. It says a Port Orange man will spend 2 years in prison for not informing sex partners he was infected with HIV. What's important to know about this story is that his sexual partners were Black women. Gentry Burns, 27, pleaded no contest Thursday to one count of uninformed HIV-infected sexual intercourse. 2 of the counts were dropped. Burns was first arrested in 2019 when an ex-girlfriend came forward with information that Burns was having sex with women without telling them he was infected. Burns would be in probation 12 months after he released from prison. So here is a white gentleman that was dating Black women and having, relations with Black women, and he was infected with HIV, and he knew it. He knew it, and he didn't tell them. And, of course, he, got prosecuted for it. I mean, 2 years for literally giving someone a not life-threatening disease, that seems almost like laughable. But here's another situation. Now, the thing I wonder about is how many of the Black women that he was talking with were kind of on the swirler tip. And the reason I say that is because, again, and I can say this as a Black woman because I've heard this, even heard this from certain family members when I was single, and this whole idea of like, oh, well, maybe you want to date out, or, maybe you want to marry out because, a Black man burn, or, maybe you'll find it easier. Like I heard this narrative. And so I'm not saying this theoretically. I can say this as a woman in a dating market who very much knew what I was hearing. And so, some of us, we are told this, Black women, we are told this, hey, you may be better off dating out. And so again, the problem with that is it is not only does that cause a woman to not reflect in herself, it's almost as if like you can put the blinders on, because, sometimes I think when we're dating in our own community, sometimes we can almost be too defensive and we can start to project trauma and project things. But sometimes when you go into new territory, or when you go to you're dating outside, then sometimes you may not be as suspicious. You may not be as suspicious, or you may just expect, oh, well, because of this, because of that, it's going to be easier. And I'm thinking, how many women who had relations with him were on this swirler vibe, or were on this, oh, I'm divesting from the Black community so that I can have it easier, and they end up getting infected with HIV. This is, again, some of the most dusty behavior I've ever seen, and this is from a white male gentleman. And so, or I don't know if I can call him a gentleman, a white guy, because there's nothing gentle about that. That's completely horrible. And so again, if you choose to swirl, I think you have to be just as cognizant, you have to be just as aware, you have to be just as, open-minded as if you were to date inside of your community. Because again, just because you decide to marry out does not mean that you're going to be free from all drama. As we saw in the situation earlier, where the woman married a white guy and he left her with her 5 kids, and meanwhile she was saying that she had a newborn in her hand. So she's saying that she got left with 5 kids as she has a newborn in her hands. And then we see this situation here of of this guy being literally infecting Black women, not telling him, infecting with HIVs. He gets his slap on the finger. 2 years is nothing, and he has 12 months of probation. So he probably won't even serve. He'll probably only serve a few months, if that. But he doesn't even really get prosecuted for it, and it's like, what's going on? What's going on? And what's really, 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 really interesting is I don't really hear people talking about this. I certainly saw a lot of people talking about it. I'm sure you guys may know of the one the engagement photo situation. You guys may or may not heard about it, where it was basically a Black guy who was marrying a white girl, and they took an engagement shoot at the plantation, and the theme was slavery, and he was a slave and she was the, I guess, basically slave master, and that was the theme of their engagement shoot. And so I heard all kinds of trash. I heard all kinds of, swirlers and adversaries coming on being like, see, this is why you can't marry these Black men, because they're worshiping Becky, they're this and that. See, this is why you need to divest. And so I heard that over and over and over and over again. And that was disgusting. But what I haven't heard, I didn't really hear anyone pick this up. I didn't hear anyone really talk about this, white guy who went and basically completely ravaged Black women, completely wrecked their life by giving him HIV on purpose. I didn't hear anyone to cover that. And I also didn't hear anyone, talk about this Black woman who married a white guy talking about, hey, it's difficult. I just got left with 5 kids. So don't think that this is a race specific thing. White guys can leave their kids too. Black guys can leave their kids too. Mexican guys can leave their kids too. Asian guys. Like, it's, again, you can find Dusty in all cultures. You can find Dusty in all races. And Dusty, more than anything, is a state of being. It is a state of mind. It is not limited to how you look, or it's not limited to race. And as a woman, especially as a Black woman, because if you're a Black woman, you've probably heard this before. Please do not think that just because you decide, or if you do decide to date and marry out, that it's going to go easier for you, because that's not necessarily the case, as we see here. So thank you for those of you who have just hopped on. Please get the likes